In systems thinking, there are these stories or archetypes to help leaders map out situations. And one archetype I particularly like is called avoiding the quick fix. I'll give you an example. Recruitment. School districts are determined to recruit teachers of color because they know the decision is backed by research. I'll put the study in the show notes because it's powerful. That study shows that the effect of having a black male teacher, especially between grades 3 and 5, decreases the dropout rate among black students by 30% and increases the likelihood of black students aspiring to higher education. We need more black teachers in our public schools. Sometimes, though, districts will try and recruit from far away with this hope that this quick fix will help them achieve that goal. And it doesn't work. You get a teacher for a year and then they return home where they have genuine community. The better approach is to avoid the quick fix and build a sustainable and lasting system. The school districts who have created Grow Your Own programs, for instance, are doing it the right way. There's a part of my conversation this week with my guest that brings to mind time-lapse photography. You know, like when someone wants to capture a project from its inception to completion. Joe Johnson's my guest, and when he was describing the cultural field that schools create to demonstrate their love and their trust and their faith in the children in their care, it made me think about the planning or the construction of a building, breaking ground, the documented progress, and its final product. Well-conceived plans, avoiding the quick fix. You're going to want to hear what Joe has to say, for he provides the optimism for all of us working to make our nation's greatest treasure, public education, a reality for all. It's a great one. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today on An Imperfect Leader, Dr. Joseph Johnson is my guest. Dr. Johnson is the founding executive director of the National Center for Urban School Transformation, NCUST, at San Diego State University Research Foundation. While serving at NCUST, he was also a professor of educational leadership at San Diego State University, and then he was the dean of the College of Education, and then finally the university's interim provost and senior vice president. Now retired, he exclusively works with and for NCUST. He is considered an elite leader and thinker in his field, and his passion and deep practical study of what works in urban education really is groundbreaking. Dr. Joseph Johnson, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you. It is an honor and a pleasure to be with you today.
That's very kind. Well, Joe, I am really excited to speak with you. And really, that's because I came across your research on a school district that led transformation efforts and really truly showed how communities with the best schools win. You wrote about Maplewood Richmond Heights in your co-authored book, When Black Students Excel, How Schools Can Engage and Empower Black Students. And I will put a link to that in the show notes. You spoke about a school district where parents initially perceived the high school, specifically the high school, as a school that lacked rigor, lacked high expectations for either student behavior or student academic performance, and lacked a commitment to ensuring that the children's success in school and in life. And then through deep study, conversations with teachers and Principal Grauer, you documented a school that transformed the educational experiences for children. And now many Maplewood Richmond Heights high school graduates attend highly esteemed colleges and universities, including Butler University, Columbia College, Cornell University, Georgetown, Howard, University of Missouri. And so I know this is a long way of getting to a question. And for those who are listening, I can tell you he attended all throughout my long sort of conversation there. I know it took a long time to get to this question. My question for you is this. After reading about Maplewood Richmond Heights and then looking at how the National Center for Urban School Transformation documents success, what is it that all schools, especially urban schools, can learn from your book?
I think there are several things. I hope that there are several things that folks can learn. And I would start with saying the most important is that it can be done. You may be at a school where you think, wow, the demographics are challenging. The students are coming with a lot of needs. There may be any number of frustrating barriers that need to be addressed. But there are schools that have taken that on and succeeded. And so, the fact that some leaders have done it, and the fact that those leaders did not, at least as far as we know, have a big S across their chest. The fact that mortals can do this should be inspiration to us. But it's also important for us to keep in mind that in these very successful schools, leaders showed us that they couldn't do it by themselves. Leading means getting other people on board to help make great things happen. And that's what these leaders had to do. And it's also important to know that it isn't easy and it's not a quick fix. Over the years, INCUST has identified, celebrated, studied, written about 176 different schools across the country. And not even one of those leaders said, "Oh, piece of cake." And for all of them, it wasn't just a one-year thing. It was multiple years of hard work, but the bottom line still is that it can be done.
Let me ask you a question, because particularly in metropolitan and urban districts, there is a sense of urgency that changes have to happen. And there's also a revolving door of leaders, whether it's at the building level or at the district level. And so there's always a new set of values and goals and a new mission. And underneath this umbrella of all children will succeed. And I imagine in the 176 different schools that you've looked at and recognize that it takes time, I wonder what advice might you offer to those who are deeply committed to long-term staying in a school district so that they can make the kind of progress that they hope to make. Is there advice that you typically give? Because I imagine they look to you to say, I'm all in. But how can you help me with this sense of urgency that I'm feeling, this pressure I'm feeling from above?
Yeah. I think the issue is that leaders have to know that they've got to be in it for the long haul. And ultimately, our work as educators is all about growth, which means that we need to be all about growth. And so we've got to position ourselves so that we're constantly learning. And part of that learning is figuring out how to listen to the new folks in the district office, the new folks who have their 25-point plan for how they're going to make everything perfect.
I won't take that personally because I think mine was just 8 points, but still 8 goals. When you're focused on 8 things, you're focused on nothing. So I get it. But
yeah. But you have to be able to listen to those folks, and you got to be able to sift through, and you have to think, okay, what can I use from this as leverage to help my students, my community, my educators, so that we can make a difference?
I think that's really wise. There are 2 thoughts that I had as you were saying that. The first, in terms of it takes time. And I think about this from the point of view, as you were discussing it, to say, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. It's really sort of a generational relay race, right? You inherited a system that was created how many hundreds of years ago before you even arrived. And so if it's about growth, you can be proud of the growth you made and then hand that baton off to the next person who you will trust to then continue going to make that growth, so that you don't have to think that I've got to make all, I have to succeed in some grand way, to the point that you said that we shouldn't think that we have an S on our chest. So the second piece that I thought of also as you were talking about that is how wise it would be for those who are under the supervision and direction of someone as a superior to look at what are their points that they're bringing forward and to say, okay, where does the work we've been doing fall into that? So they can be proud of the work that we're doing and feel as if we're all aligned and doing this work together. So smart. In the leadership model that I use to advise others, there is a dimension, nested patterns. And that's really the muscle of an organization's work. And inside that dimension are these terms. And here it is, an S, right? So, okay, fine. We're not super people, but we can say the S is shared leadership. So shared leadership, empathy and compassion, and creativity and courage. These are all nested patterns. And in preparing for our conversation, I read about one important characteristic of America's best urban schools. And I wonder if you would read it for us.
So I'll just preface by saying that this section is about the culture of these very successful schools. And I'll also add that this isn't about a half a dozen or a dozen or 2 dozen. This is about every one of these schools. And so what this says is we define the culture as positive because in each of these high-performing schools, we found strong, healthy learning environments where administrators, teachers, staff members, and families treated one another as valued partners in the education of their students. Trust and mutual respect were evident in the relationships between and among all school personnel. Students perceived that the adults in the school knew them well and were committed to their success in school and beyond. They felt appreciated, cared for, and loved.
What a beautiful paragraph demonstrating clearly a compelling purpose for a school in terms of what they need to mean for children if they're going to succeed. It's just so beautifully written, and it really captures a place that every one of us would want our own children. I wonder, would you mind sharing an example of what you've observed of how a school can build that trust between school personnel and with students?
There's so many wonderful examples, but many of them are small. One that I love is seeing a teacher hand back work to a student, and where you know that when the student receives this paper back, it's going to mean more work for the student, right? And where I know, because the teacher talked to me about this, the teacher said when he started as a teacher, he would hand the work back and students would get upset. They would turn off. They wouldn't make the effort to do the corrections, to do exemplary work. But what he said was, and what I observed, was the teacher saying, you know, I read this paper, and it is so clear to me that you have so much potential. I can just see you doing great things in life. And so I really want to help you just shine on this. And so I read this and I really thought about what would really help a reader see this and see your brilliance, right? And the kid just grabs it and takes it and goes to town. The comments are the same as if the teacher just said, you didn't do a great job on this, right? And here's the things you
As I expected. Right.
Yeah, right. But because of the way the teacher framed it, the kid is seeing, whoa, this person values me. They care about me. They believe in me. Oh yeah, I'm going to show this teacher that his confidence in me is well placed. And I'm going to do my best on this.
And we'll be right back. In the many conversations I've been having with leaders all across the country, there are some themes that keep popping up. And one is the fact that children are really having a hard time engaging in school. And one big part of that is the phone that's in their hands. Schools around the world are seeing the damaging effects of phones on student engagement, social development, mental health. Yonder is a company that has developed a unique product and program to allow schools to become phone-free, from arrival to dismissal. Learn why 1 million students use Yonder every day. Minimize distractions. Maximize learning potential. Go to overyonder.com to learn more. We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. My guest is Dr. Joseph Johnson, the founding executive director of the National Center for Urban School Transformation. In this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision that has been made, and then we discuss it. So, Joe, what happened?
So we had the pleasure of working with a superintendent in an urban district. And it was a district that was struggling mightily. And we thought that we were making progress in helping the district address teaching practices in a supportive way. And on one of our trips to the district, we were shocked when we entered into our first school and we saw that at the direction of the district's leaders, that they had implemented district-wide a very low-level direct instruction reading program. And this was all the way from kindergarten through 8th grade. And it was with a script, and teachers were very upset because they felt like they were being asked to be robots, and it just wasn't working at all.
It sounds like what you're describing, and maybe the teachers could or could not articulate it at that moment. But you're describing reform versus transformation, right? So reform is everybody's going to do this. And then the monitoring is about compliance. And we're going to put the pressure on. And we're not interested in your inquiry and the cycles of trying to get better, but rather compliance, 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 and sticks, 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 and carrots.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So, wow. As my mentor would say, that's a juicy topic. So she's amazing leader. So I'm interested, what got overlooked?
Yeah. Clearly, there were some important things that the district leaders saw. They saw that achievement, particularly in terms of literacy, was horribly low. They saw that they had a lot of teachers who had limited experience. There were a very substantial number of first, second, third year teachers. So they saw all of those elements, and they saw a quick fix. Let's bring in this scripted, low-level program. We can train everybody to follow this script, and that is going to elevate our instruction. What they overlooked was, well, first, they overlooked the fact that they had a lot of educators who were excited about their potential to really make a difference in elevating the rigor of the lessons in a way that was going to motivate students. They overlooked that even though many of these teachers were first, second, and third year teachers, many of them had some pretty good teacher preparation, in particular in reading. And they were excited about continuing to learn and to do even better in terms of literacy instruction. And the district overlooked that a top-down decision would turn all of those folks off in a dramatic way that would be very hard to reverse.
I was thinking as you were describing the scenario, that exact issue, which is how often leaders fail to include the individuals most impacted by a decision, and then are confused when their quick fix sort of blows up in their face.
Yes.
What did you observe in terms of relationships? What new relationships were formed? Or it sounds like actually it was the complete opposite. What did they learn about relationships?
Yeah. And so, we were in the district to help the district achieve its goals. But of course, nobody at the district office was teaching literacy. So we knew we had to work with the schools, right? And quite frankly, what we naively assumed was there was good communication between the folks in the schools and the district folks. And coming in late and finding all of this blowing up, we encouraged them to come to the table, school leaders, teacher leaders, district office, and have a conversation. And we encouraged the district to start with what was the why? What were they really concerned about? What did they really want to see? And when the folks from the schools heard this, they were actually surprised because they had no idea what was the logic behind this. And so the relationship was totally overlooked as something that would be important. And when people came together and they started having these conversations, then teachers and principals were able to say, well, hey, this is how this makes me feel. We want to be a part of the solution, but this doesn't give us a chance to be a part of the solution. And so let's talk about how we can do some of what you want and do some of what we think is important. And they came to some understandings, imperfect though they may have been. They still moved out of that horrible place where everybody was, in essence, halting.
It sounded that it grinded to a halt,
Yes.
and that it was this idea of teachers believing that those above them saw this from a very much a deficit model of what children can't do.
Yes.
And we're going to fix those kids. And you know what? The way to fix those kids is to fix those teachers. And instead of looking at this through an abundant sort of look at all this learning and professional learning and talent that teachers bring to the classroom daily, how can we leverage that to take this model, even if it's adopting a program or materials, whatever? How do we leverage that teacher talent to make this better? That's so interesting. And usually the last question is, so in the end, what was something that was good that came out of the situation? It sounds as if because of your urging or your organization's urging, that there was a convening and an opportunity to talk and learn and listen and empathize and demonstrate compassion to some degree, and that there was, while imperfect, some movement forward.
Yes. I think that can really be summed up with the notion that great leaders learn that their success comes from listening to the people that they are trying to lead. And when we listen well, when we show the people that we are leading, that we believe in them and that we see talent in them and that we see commitment and passion in them, we get much more from them. When we allow them to be part of the solution, we can multiply our chances of success.
My guest again today was Dr. Joseph Johnson, the founding executive director of the National Center for Urban School Transformation, NCUST, at San Diego State University's Research Foundation. And Joe, I mean, you've talked about some really important themes today about shared leadership and the fact that you make decisions with those who are most impacted by that decision, and that, and in your words, and you just said it, that it shows that we believe in the people we're leading when we include them in that work. I'm grateful to you. Thank you so much for giving me time.
Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this.
Music for An Imperfect Leader was written and arranged by Ian Varley. Sam Falbo created the Daruma doll butterfly artwork. Imperfect leadership is not a scarlet letter. It is a badge of honor. It recognizes that serving as a lead learner is about being a vulnerable leader, an empathetic leader, a compassionate leader. And I'm proud to be an imperfect leader, so I hope you'll join me next time for another episode of An Imperfect Leader. Leadership in After Action.